People may ask or wonder why people in the Black community are quick to spend money in communities outside of Black community. The higher the circulation of dollars in a community, the greater the economic stability and opportunities for economic growth in that community. According to research on economic growth, money circulates 1 time within the Black American community compared to more than 6 times in the Latino community, 9 times in the Asian community, and an unlimited amount of times within the white community. Only 6 cents of every dollar is all that Black Americans spend with Black businesses. Do you know that is learned behavior from Black American experience in slavery and then the sharecropping system? But you must know Black American history to understand it. When most Blacks emerged from slavery, most of Black Americans tried to get as far away from former slave masters and their plantations as possible. Black Americans even set up more than 60 all-Black towns where Black Americans had Black American-owned government and began a strong tradition of do for self without the oversight of former slave masters. And many of these 60 Black towns were in Indian territories. Did you know that the native people have lots of land and resources, mineral strength today? But the enemy is right on Indian land, taking the gas, taking the uranium, taking whatever their lands have, and giving them nothing. Guess what? When the enemy saw Black Americans building those 60 towns, did you know they helped to destroy all 60 of those towns and began to set up a series of laws that came to be known as Jim Crow laws? Their purpose was to return Blacks as close as possible to the state of slavery that Black Americans had previously been in, and most important, to force Black Americans back into the cotton fields to keep the cotton-based economy from collapsing. Under these wicked laws, money in the hands of Blacks was treated as though it was a weapon of mass white destruction. Under Jim Crow, whites made it illegal to sell property to Blacks, and Blacks were forbidden by law to sell their own farm products without written permission from a Caucasian, thus criminalizing Black business enterprise. Black Americans couldn't get justice in the court system because they came up with a law that said Negro testimony would not be accepted unless that testimony was verified by a white man. A white man could walk into your home, take whatever he wanted, including your cotton or corn harvest, or your daughter, or your wife, and Black Americans had no legal recourse. All of this was done, and it was not even considered a crime. Also, if Blacks tried to save and invest their earnings, their money could be confiscated. So under Abraham Lincoln, Black Americans established something like the Freedmen's Bureau. Notice the past participle of the verb to free, freedmans. That's not something that Black Americans did for Black Americans. That's something that somebody else did for Black community. Black Americans never freed themselves. Black Americans were freed by them, and therefore, Black Americans still singing, "We shall overcome." You're not free until you know the truth that will set you free. Under the Freedmen's Bureau, Black Americans set up the Freedmen's Bank. Of course, all of this came from Abe Lincoln to encourage and guide the economic development of the newly emancipated slaves. The Freedmen's Bank operated just 9 years, from 1865 to 1874. It had 37 branches in 17 states. Black Civil War veterans, farmers, churches, and charities all opened a total of 480,000 accounts, with assets worth $4 million. In today's currency, that would be $5.8 billion. When Blacks had that kind of money, Black Americans could buy all the land that money could buy. So then, the bloodsuckers descended and drained the bank of every last penny, leaving tens of thousands of its Black depositors in economic ruin. And because there was no deposit insurance, Black Americans were left with an almost total distrust of the banking system. So, between government trickery and the widespread cheating by retail merchants and a legal system that prohibited Blacks from complaining, Blacks began their so-called American citizenship economically exploited and badly crippled. Here's a Black history fact. W.E.B. Du Bois estimated that in the time from the so-called Emancipation Proclamation in 1865 to the end of the 1800s, 3/4 of the wages due to Blacks, that's 75 cents of every dollar, was simply stolen from Black Americans. Blacks responded to this oppression in what appeared to be a very logical way by becoming fast spenders. So the moment Black Americans got their money, Black Americans knew that if they could quickly turn their wages into some commodity, they had a better chance of seeing value for their labor. Black Americans couldn't trust banks to hold it, so every Friday, Black Americans spent all their wages with the overpriced merchants who left Black Americans with nothing. Black Americans wanted to use their money wisely, but the economic and legal system punished Black Americans when they did. Although Black Americans' response to this wickedness was logical, it set in motion a damaging spend-as-you-get-it mindset that continues to this very day. Black Americans' adjustment to this evil has created in Black Americans what has become a greater evil. Black Americans became a consumer community upon which now everybody else is benefiting. So instead of allowing that robbery to make Black Americans wiser in protecting Black Americans' money, Black Americans allowed themselves to become consumers all the way from then to now. They took away Black American savings, and now they made Black Americans give it back to them as a consumer. So today, Black Americans don't trust banks. Black Americans don't trust courts. Black Americans don't even trust themselves. It's very hard for an economist to plan a wise program and see his plans carried out, because the so-called American Negroes' economics are controlled by their former slave masters and their children. The American dream is built on a Black nightmare. So Black Americans ran away from economics because of all the abuse and the barriers of the marketplace that forced Black Americans out of that realm. And every immigrant group finds a way to nestle into the Black community to take from Black Americans whatever immigrants need to build immigrant communities and exalt themselves in the fabric of America. So, all of them will fight against anybody who comes to Black Americans with an economic plan that would wrest control of the Black dollar back into Black hands. According to one study made by the Gazelle Index, a national quarterly survey of CEOs of high-performing small businesses and businesses owned by diverse groups, if Black Americans double what Black Americans spend to 12 cents, that alone would create nearly 600,000 additional jobs for Black workers and would reduce the Black unemployment rate by more than 3 points, from 13.8% to 10.6%. Presently, statistics starkly reflect the economic disparity on how little Black dollars circulate within the Black community today. This limited circulation perpetuates instability, stifles local business growth, and restricts meaningful employment opportunities. The fight for economic equality demands a multifaceted approach. Financial literacy is paramount, equipping individuals with the knowledge to navigate complex financial systems. Concurrently, dismantling systemic barriers is imperative. Discriminatory lending practices, inequitable education access, and biased hiring must be eradicated to create an equitable landscape. Community support plays a vital role, emphasizing the significance of education and economic empowerment in overcoming historical injustices. To bridge the wealth gap, society must confront its historical sins. Acknowledging the roots of economic exploitation is the first step. Financial education programs, accessible to all, can empower individuals, fostering informed decision-making. Simultaneously, systemic reforms are indispensable. Legislation against discriminatory practices can level the economic playing field. Community initiatives, emphasizing education and local investment, can amplify the impact. In conclusion, the story of the Black dollar encapsulates a legacy of struggle, resilience, and untapped potential. By understanding the historical context, acknowledging the cyclical nature of poverty, and actively dismantling systemic inequalities, society can pave the way for a more fair future. The racial wealth gap, while deeply entrenched, is not insurmountable. Through education, awareness, and collective action, we can bridge this gap, ushering in a future where economic opportunity knows no racial boundaries. It is not just a societal obligation, it is a moral imperative to create a world where every individual, regardless of their background, can thrive economically. Hope you find the information in this video helpful. Feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.